Hello. Welcome back to another stream of Boomeadow Builds, State of Anarchy. We are here this week, tonight, building more of the land of Feyawyr, which is essentially a mirrored version of the Feywild. We're going to be working on spring and summer this evening. Hello to everybody already watching. Hi, Tide Runner. Yes, hello, Tide Runner. Getting to work on some crazy stuff tonight, basically. Let me know if the music is too loud. Hi, Edwin. How are you? Welcome to this crazy endeavor that is going to be some map building. This is currently the state of events of Feyawyr. We have finished the autumn-winter build on the top left. On the top right, we have winter to spring, and now we are going to be moving over to the spring-summer, which should be interesting. Trying to match them all together. So when I finish these, I actually put them into, I save them, usually at a higher export, and then put them all into one bigger map so that when they are finally complete, I'll be able to put it in as one map. So I go through in the bigger map, as you could see here, and I actually try to match up the lines so that there aren't glaringly obvious lines where they meet. So we will go through. There will be opportunities as well if there are some little Fey territories or things like that, little Fey boroughs, townsteads, that kind of thing that you could potentially get an opportunity to name. Although there is always that fun aspect that sometimes, just sometimes, my players lose naming rights. So, I'm going to move the map layer. As you can see here, there is an upper layer here. So what we do is we put this actual map layer, and this is what we're actually working with. A lot of base lines and stuff. So this is at least the territory lines. This is where the tree will be. This is kind of what we're working with as a base. Gee, it could be the fact that I mean, there have been opportunities where I have given players naming rights, and they may or may not have decided to go a little bit rogue, basically. And in going rogue, it lost them their naming rights on the pure basis that they couldn't be trusted with the names, unfortunately. They did create a very rich world lore with the history that they did create, but the name wasn't exactly friendly. Everyone friendly, should I say. It was definitely not a G-rated name. But, out of the kindness of my heart, I was willing to forgive and let other people try and name things in my world, hopefully. Now we are just trying to match this up so that these will be in some of the correct places. But as you can see, it is not as easy as it looks. We will get there eventually. I feel like we're almost there. I feel like that might be in the close enough territory. If I was invisible for a day, what would I do? Probably sleep. I feel like that's a very boring answer, but the sleep is a good one. I can sometimes be quite a boring individual. But being able to sleep when no one can find you is probably a little bit of a luxury that I like the sound of. Somehow I feel like that's not the way that would work, unfortunately. I feel like they've got more than one copy. Yeah, exactly. Undisturbed sleep, no alarm clock is a win, definitely. Just getting to sleep as long as you like. But I have a feeling, though, if you were to do that, the problem would be that you've had such a good sleep that you then overslept and so you're still tired. I attempt to. Tide Runner, I definitely attempt to. So, I attempt to, not well, being the answer there, though. So, I have decided, actually, I think I went along and I renamed some of these bays and stuff. So, Nook Bay, I believe, is becoming Umber? I don't know if Umber Bay works, because this is a spring territory. Umber invokes wintry things, I think. You know what? Might go Yoster. The Talem Archipelago. I'm actually going to keep these archipelago island names because they are actually correct. Because even though that they are part of the existent material plane, well, I feel like that would be cheating because if I have any of my future players of this game, it would give an indication of where I want to start. I mean, although, if it was up to me, there would be something fitting, I think, about starting somewhere in a spring territory and working your way through all of the seasons. Very a la Snow Queen, I think. Which, if you are not aware, in the Snow Queen, they do indeed make their way through all of the seasons so that she can rescue her friend from the Snow Queen. Yeah. I cannot remember the name of the characters, but yes, the young woman in the story goes through all of the seasons into the territory of the Snow Queen to rescue her friend who was abducted by the Snow Queen, basically. I don't think his name was Steve. Yes. So, Edwin, the world that I'm actually creating, so this is the fourth era of my pre-existing world. So I have now been running games in this for more than 5 years now. And so we're coming up to the fourth era of this game. And at the end of the previous era, the third era, through the events of an eldritch entity known as the Titan King, he was trying to break free from his prison in Tartarus after he had betrayed all of the other eldritch gods many, many, many years ago, centuries ago. And the players in that game, their whole journey and things was basically to... their whole journey through all of this was working their way through the Necronomicon, awakening eldritch creatures to basically put together the bits of the puzzle to prevent the Titan King from rising. Now, they did prevent him from rising, but they did not prevent the 3 central planes of existence being drawn closer to each other in an event known as the Merge. And so they became a parallel mirror plane of each other. So they're all kind of... So the Feywild, the Hells, and the material plane all exist on the kind of same plane of existence now. But because they're a mirror, like a parallel of each other, they also exist separately, but on the same plane of existence, over top of each other. Yeah. So when the merge happened, these islands here were actually originally on the material plane. Yes. So this area here, when it was on the material plane in the 3rd era, they didn't look like this. This is actually all that is left of the world from the 1st and 2nd era. And a meteor did hit here at the end of the 2nd era, and this became known as the Starfall Islands. And they, because they were hit by a meteor, it did actually change some of the properties of them, and they actually started to float. So they became known as the Starfall Islands. And they were very much separationists. They stayed away from the politics of the wider world so this wider world that we saw was actually created on the material plane. When it was created by the ascendant gods of the 3rd era. So, well, what happened with the material plane when the merge happened, because of the nature of it, you'll see when because I'll be going through and yeah. So what happened basically is when the merge happened, and we'll see this when we build the Hells and we go back and tinker with the material plane map as well. Aspects of all of the material plane will have come through to the Feywild, so this is why it's now known as Feyawyr. So these islands will have been mirrored through, and so they exist simultaneously here on what is known as the material plane, or Anthalamir, and also in Hell, which is known as Nethreg at this point. So they are all mirrored, but they are all on different pocket dimensions, I suppose, as a lack of a better word. So yeah, they kind of exist simultaneously as well. So different people can live in different planes of existence, but be living in the same area, and they may have teleportation portals to help them jump between each of these planes of existence and things like this. But at the moment, the material plane, that's where the big bads are going to be, the witch queens that are trying to take over everything and trying to take over magic. And so, oh, what are you doing? I picked the wrong thing for whatever reason. We want this one here, and this is now too small. What size are you? You're 14? You're not 14, you're now 4. There we go. When I computer things. Yeah. Little bits and pieces that I mess up a lot. So yes, they will simultaneously exist and not exist, I suppose. So characters that will have lived on this world and things like this. Don't necessarily... I'm going to turn the map off just so I can fill these little... because these are little pits that we don't actually want. This is what happens when you don't completely fill in an area properly. But then put in a whole heap of trees so you don't notice them until you take all the trees out. So this time around, the 4th era, where the campaign's starting, is actually going to be in this Feywild setting now. I think any class can be thirsty. I don't actually think there is a thirstiest class at all. I think it definitely comes down to the way the player wants to play the character. I think people expect charming, those people with high charisma, to generally be the thirstiest. So if that's the case, I mean, it would probably be warlocks after, because I believe they're charisma casters. But again, I think it just comes down to the way the player wants to play them in the end. I mean, there is always every possibility. It depends on the DM too, that you can have a lot of thirsty NPCs. But I mean, I generally, as a base rule, I generally play even my NPCs as, you know, people. So not every character that my player characters meet is going to be interested in a relationship regardless. But one thing I actually do with all of my NPCs as I go through a town, which I like to establish at least the major NPCs in my town before players go through there anyway. But I actually go through and build like a little character profile for each of my NPCs, which I go through and I pre-establish their gender identity, their sexuality. So, for example, you could have a really thirsty character trying to hit on an NPC and they're just not interested because you are not their type. You know? So, I like having that pre-established so that, you know, you can't just have an NPC, a player character walk into a town and completely just get away with whatever they want because thirst. Yeah, well, that's the other thing as well. If you're running a standard traditional game where, you know, you're not sharing it on the internet, I think a lot of people use Pinterest artwork. And in using Pinterest artwork, I mean, there are a lot of really talented artists out there that draw very attractive artwork. You become everyone's type. Yeah, but I think just because they fit everyone's type doesn't mean they're going to be attracted to everybody, because they might have a distaste for certain behaviors or something. Okay, now we've filled in those little bits. Now, question is, I actually think this might be the first mountain range I take out. Do I want to do that? I mean, it does make more sense to have the volcano in a different area. So, we'll take these volcanoes out. Which means we might be able to do something interesting with this river. I like the idea of having this bigger lake here though. Now comes the slightly tedious part where I go through, and you don't want it to be too uniform. This is something I've kind of keyed in a little bit. What would you prefer, Tide Runner? What would you prefer to do out of the two. Now, I know as a DM, you don't like flying races. I'll call you out for that. Only at lower levels. This is true. Okay. Don't like that point there, though. Yeah, but I feel like even at lower levels though, because if you have flying enemies or even hovering enemies, there is enough of a scope that you can have ways to counteract flying NPCs, which would mean that there are enough lower level creatures as well that you could counteract flying NPCs too, flying player characters too. Always save your work. We do the saving of the work. Well, that's exactly it. I think I have seen some commentary on that though, that like some DMs don't like Aarakocra, especially at lower levels, because giving the Aarakocra the flying ability can almost make them exponentially more powerful than their comparative characters. I mean, I do somewhat account for that, because even though I do get my players to roll for their stats, which normally we do 4d6, the standard 4d6, d1 or whatever, but I still put a cap on it that you can't have, I think, under 71 points. And then I also then counteract that there end up being flying enemies as well. Because by right of like the way that I run my world, for example, if there are races of people that have evolved to fly, it means that they are going to have some kind of native enemy, I suppose. So that's what I kind of work on, that, you are going to, as a group, you are going to encounter those problems, that you will have that issue, that there will be enemies that can fly. And for whatever reason, they may not reach lower levels. Like, for example, there can be types of birds and things like this that don't hover well themselves. There can be types of creatures that don't get low to the ground because, and most of the time they launch off of cliffs because they can't actually get enough updraft to fly. But like flying up higher and taking out a lower lying enemy is something that, for example, predator species of birds do. Like eagles and falcons and things like this. They tend to fly higher than their prey, ride the wind currents, and then dive down to take out their enemies, basically. Well, not their enemies, but their prey. we'll give this whole area a repaint. First things first, we'll put in some grass, and then we'll start also working on the transition of this, because this is spring to summer. So there is not going to be any snow in this area. That being said, I don't think I've actually had to date a player who has played a flying race at a lower level. I normally start at 3rd level as well, but even then I don't think I've ever had a player who has played a flying race. And part of that, I think, is I do have quite an extensive number of races they can pick from. There is a lot of variety with the type of races. Even with this campaign, I'm going through and I'm formulating like the different races, because there will be people that will live in this version of the Feyawyr, because they have basically endeavoured to escape the persecution of the witch queens and things like that. Lizard folk are an interesting one. Again, I haven't actually thought a lot about how I would play a lizard folk, just because it's never really come up. But see, it's an interesting concept. See, that's an interesting thing. I had never considered that about lizards. I suppose because for the longest time throughout the second era of this world, the Dragonborn believed that they were a form of lizard folk. And it's just through the machinations of, because of the actions of the gods that had preceded them, there was no god of dragons, so they didn't know they didn't know they were dragons, basically. So that kind of did take a time for the dragons to realize essentially they're dragons. Yeah, it took them a while to realise that dragons were not lizards. And then what I'm thinking throughout the 4th era now is through the machinations of the actual world itself. Even now, though, Dragonborn, there are going to be different stats for the different Dragonborn depending on where they're born. So I was thinking, at least with the notes that I've written down, for example, the material plane is where you're going to see a lot more of the like chromatic Dragonborns. You're going to see fairy Dragonborns from obviously the Feywild. See, that's cool. I like that. Yeah. And I suppose, ornamental carp, koi pond. Yeah, I could see that. That's cool. It's a very cool concept. Oh, that's a tough one. I don't know. It just depends. Jumping into a pool of Jello. It depends. Are you allowed to shower straight afterwards? Because there's nothing worse than feeling sticky. Yeah, nothing worse than feeling sticky. Now, somewhere in all of these texture packs, I know that there's one for flowers. This one. I think I might just have to turn the opacity up slightly. So I use Incarnate for these maps, which is a really great tool. I absolutely love Incarnate. It also depends on how thick the Jello would be too. The Jello jelly. You're about to see my very vast stamp catalogue for Incarnate, which is why I really like it. I really like it for actual building the world maps as well. Oh yeah, I can lizard folk, that having that utilitarian opinion about, you know, I think there is lizard folk in the Feywild part of this map, and yeah, that makes sense. They're very utilitarian. They're very, you know, practical, survival based and things like this. It's a very interesting, a very good way to play them, I think. Some of these are new that I do like. Temple, Gothic Horror. This is what we want here though. So thick it becomes a trampoline. Ooh. I feel like with that you'd be trusting the skin of it quite heavily not to just become goo. Ooh. We could go some hills. We could go some of these kind of like terrainy pieces. changing up the music. Yeah, but the problem with Jello is that as your body temperature had heated up, it would actually get like liquid again. So I don't think you could ever truly trust your own home. Jelly cave-in. There is a show that I think refers to it as a jelly flood. Yes, I've learned with these hills as well to be careful with their placement because it is very easy to make them look like a butt. I think it's this one in particular. Oh, this one in particular. I think I've used it in conjunction with like this one, and it looks like someone laying face down on a blanket. And in the second era of the world, which is currently being played through on Tuesdays, I now have players that just refer to them as the Butt Hills. They do have a name. They are actually the Gumnut Valley, but they do not refer to them as the Gumnut Valley. And I wonder why. Look, sometimes when I'm picking the names of places, and especially in these particular situations, I picked names that were indicative of what was in the area. There was no cave in the Butt Hills at all. It was perfectly innocent. It did not stop them from making fun of it, though. And that right there, Edwin, is why I don't generally let people name players name places. They cannot be trusted. See, this is the thing now. And even if I did put a cave in there now, if they destroyed it, it wouldn't end well. Now there is an existing map that I do actually have to check because there is a whole island missing. I just need to remember which one it is. It'd be pretty close to that one island. Okay, if it's a few that are lost, the problem is I need to remember which one it is. Because it's... Oh, here's the question. It's only going to be one way to know. Bear with me for a moment while I check my world map. I do run my games in Roll20 still, much to the chagrin of some of my players who think I should move across to Foundry. And I have played games in Foundry before, and it has seemed interesting, the way that it runs it and things like this. But so much of my world exists in this particular setting, so trying to move all of that over just seems so hard. Oh, it's taken a long time for this map to load in. Okay, so for the record, without a doubt the Phoenix, like the Phoenix, and the lore that goes behind it. Okay, and for the record, this one right here was Titan Point, which is actually in the Air Realm, was in the Air Realm. So unfortunately, I'll say these ones were destroyed. Yep, and bam, the island's gone. Yes. So this one up here was the Earth Realm, Water Realm, Air Realm, Fire Realm. Now there is actually one area that I do need to add to this. But I think I'm going to add it to Summer Autumn, and it is the Mysterious Floating Island, which does have a name. I just cannot remember what it is right now. It was a floating island that was built on the back of a giant turtle. I do actually get a lot of inspiration from various books and things. Yes. Okay. So, yes. But these were islands from the second era, as I've stated. So now that I know where these areas are in the Sea of Stars, we can start adding in some of the locations. Which, the things I've been using for this over here. And these elven capitals. I think this is the one I use for is this one. I think I go with size 44. But I do also come in here into the advanced settings, so I'm just going to make this a little bigger just so I can double check the colouring. I go to filters, and you can actually use this if it is not quite the colour you want to change the colour. Now I always start them with a base of blue. High contrast. Tune down some of the saturation. Bring up brightness just a little bit. Actually, on the basis of this, I might actually want to just add a bit more orange, I think, for this deserty area. Might go with something like this, though. So these were the Dwarven burrows that we do. Well, the Elven Fey burrows, should I say. turn on the map because I need to know where the territories will be. Okay. We don't want to curve in this at all. Here's the problem. That's the wrong one. So this one down here is the Sea of Stars. Hello, Valcor. I'm glad that you finally got Twitch working. It's lovely to have you here. We're just naming places. Yeah, I think Evil One said they were having issues with it too. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what the deal with it is. But yes, I think Evil One said that they were having issues with it too. We are naming things. Always a dangerous pastime. That's the one I need for Faye. But I'm glad you were finally able to get here to spend some time with us. It's lovely having you here. Do the quick save. But yes, we are working on the spring and summer court of the Feyawyr, which will be interesting. We've gone over a little bit of world lore and things like that, so always interesting, always good. Okay. There is an area I want to build over here though for a little bit. However, it's going to take a little bit of fun painting. So, what I am going to be building here is an area known as the Sweet Fields. Which is where I'm going to have some very interesting race of peoples live. I'm sure the rest of you can understand what the strange creatures that would live in the Sweet Fields might be. I've already looked up a couple of races, playable races. The buttery sprites, the Alcrems. We've also got the gummies, who live here as well. Might want to change some colour on these dunes, I think. Maybe make them a little smaller. Bring them down in size a bit. So yes, we have the sweet fields, which take this font, I think. Oh. We'll remove the curve to this writing. So we've got the sweet fields there. This is called FTC. So these are Fey towns, but it turns out I've got one Fey town to name that is as yet unnamed. So I am open to suggestions. So any suggestions, anyone, about what we should name a Fey town? Fey village. Corkwood? We could go Corkwood. And should we add some little towns or cities in the sweet fields? Yeah, we'll add some sweet, little, at least known civilizations in here. Maybe not one there right next to the text. Remove you. So, if you were a candy food coated named place, what do you think we should call it? Hi Jojo Just. The Sweet Fields. So we are building in the 4th era of my game, the Feywild has become a livable place known as Feyawyr, and the Sweet Fields, this is my way of shoehorning in the fact that I want playable food races. So we have the Al Creme live here, we have some buttery sprites, we have the gummies. And so, as you can see, we have these candy-coated kind of mountains and stuff within. And so this is the spring court of the Feywild. So I'm trying to think of some Fey-named towns. Lost Glen. Nice one, Valcourt. So far, you are, of all the players I have ever played with, you are winning the naming rights situation here. This one. Oh, difficult. What do we name some food kind of Fey names? I'm trying to think of some of like our you know what? I have to go with a traditional, much beloved, hard found now Australian sweet. We love we love a good polywaffle over here in Australia, but sadly, I don't think they make them anymore. They are essentially a crispy kind of sugar cone coating around marshmallow that's dipped in chocolate. They're dipped in chocolate, aren't they, Valcor? A polywaffle? They're really good. They've got marshmallow in the middle. They're really delicious. Yeah. They don't make them anymore, and it makes me sad. I'm trying to think what are some really inherently Australian... See, I don't feel like I could name this Tim Tam. Because, I mean, they are the far superior chocolate biscuit. Lollygobble. I mean, Lollygobble Bliss Bombs are just caramel corn. Candy coated popcorn. Caramel coated popcorn. Oh. I'm trying to think. I know that there's like a fizzy lifesaver like lolly, and I can't remember what they're called right now. You know what? I don't think this is inherently Australian, but we'll go with this. Witchettes. That's a good one. Oh, I might have to think of that, put that somewhere else. Witchettes. Make a note of that. We'll go with Whiz Fizz. Now, I don't think Whiz Fizz is inherently Australian, but I think everyone knows what Whiz Fizz is. I think. Now, I'm Australian, so obviously correct me if I'm wrong. If you are from another country and you have never heard of Whiz Fizz, let me know. I mean, our Whiz Fizz over here, it's essentially sherbet that you eat with a little spoon, plastic spoon that it comes with. And slush puppies for a race. I will have to keep that in mind for when we build the races of this area. Because, yes, there is going to be... I have a list already. Cobier. Cobbers. Again, are cobbers... Cobbers, I know, are an Australian sweet that are caramel that's dipped in chocolate, like little cubes of caramel, and they're kind of in the same... The question is, and this is definitely, I feel like, an Australian question... Fantails or cobbers? Because they're essentially the same thing. Both of them will break your teeth. Yes, both will break your teeth. Both will have you needing to go to the dentist. But the question is, which tastes better? I know that cobbers used to be better value for money. See, that is a brilliant thing. That is, Jojo, that is brilliant. See... There are a lot of like American candies we don't get over here. And so some of them, well, for a good example, Australians will never understand the American fascination with Hershey's just because we have Cadbury's over here. And to us, at least, it is the far superior chocolate just in terms of taste, because the way that we make chocolate over here tends to be very in vein with the, way that the Swiss make their chocolate a little bit, so it doesn't taste the same. So we do tend to be a bit more preferential towards our chocolate. But there are some candies that we just don't get over here, like they're very much imported and things like this. So for example, your like Twizzlers, I don't understand Twizzlers, but I can understand that people like them. That being said, Butterfingers are delicious, and I wish they were more readily available over here. I really like Butterfingers. But I know that what you guys call Milky Way, we would call Mars bars. Jaffas are good too if you like chocolate orange. Good one, Valcor. See, here's the argument though. I've heard that pineapple lumps are both New Zealand and Australian. But I know that Australians do have a tendency to claim New Zealand things as our own as well. So these will be some more material playing kind of towns. Pavlova, definitely. Lamingtons, also good. Lamingtons are a piece of like white sponge that has been dipped in like a chocolate sauce and then rolled in shredded coconut. See, Fairy Cross. You know what? I have just thought of a name. And this might get me in a lot of trouble naming a town this. We'll put it on the outskirts here. This is in honor of one of my players and their secret obsession. You know what? I'll make that a double E. I have a player who is obsessed. Valcor. Yes, you can thank Valcor for cheesecake. But you know what? This town out here, I'm going to call it Fairy Cross because that was a brilliant idea, Jojo. So now we've got to put in some human towns. Not too many, because there is actually a large number of human towns, I believe, already in the north. Because there is actually a northern part of this town here already. So we don't want to put too many in. Oh. See, the candy cornfields I wouldn't have to name because that would be like definitely a farming community out here. And I can see that. That would be a brilliant thing. So, oh, don't do that. See, this is what we're working with here. So we would put, I think, a human town in here. One here. For the sake of it, we'll put one there. Human town names, unfortunately, don't get to be as interesting. But I do still have to make a note of them because I am actually putting them all into a document somewhere. See, that's a brilliant one. I definitely think this is the problem. See, Valcor is already saying that they want to play in this game, which by creating a place called Cheesecake is making me think that they're just going to want to be from that area. Maybe. So then I have a question for all of you. What is your favourite candy? I don't know. You'd have to ask Valcor that. Would you live in a place called Shez Ka'ak and have a noble background? Lord French Vanilla. Yes. This final one, what are you going to be called? That'll be a nice little thing for that particular player when they see that. So we also have this wider big map. Just do a save. So we're going to be working on this whole map section tonight. So this will be spring coming into summer. Spring is indicative of air kind of related things. Summer is obviously indicative of fire. And these will connect to a larger map just for everyone who would like to see, who has just joined. This is kind of the map that we're working on in bits and pieces. So we're actually working in this bottom right hand side. As you can see. And from there, what we're going to do is slowly build this out. Once we've finished this map, we'll actually move back into the material plane side of things, which is known as Anthalomere. And then finally, we will work on the third mirror plane, which will have a very cool effect of a drop down because it is supposed to be the circles of hell. Yeah, no, it is incarnate. Yes. I have loved using Incarnate for the longest time. When I come around to making the town maps from this particular game, the stuff that's going to be on the material plane is actually going to be a lot of the town buildings and stuff I'm going to use for those maps. I'm actually in the process of drafting out my own tokens and icons for it. Just because at the moment that part of the world is going to very much be a futuristic, cybernetically kind of advanced world. Because in the third era of this world, there was a huge focus on the rise of arcana tech, the mining of weave ore, which is actually crystallized sap of the world tree. So now that we're coming around to the... Hello, Evil One! Yes, you made it. Welcome. So what is going to be happening with this is it's going to be a kind of modified low magic setting insofar as the players who have magic are going to be unusual, obviously, because magic is going to be quite unstable because of all the mining that has happened on the world tree throughout the third era of the world, sorry. So there is going to be a rise to arcana tech. There is going to be, obviously, we're going to see a lot of more futuristic weapons, guns and things like this that use arcana tech to power them and things like this. So, how are you, Evil One? I hope you're having a good evening. Welcome in. We've just finished naming places in the Sweet Fields over here. We have named a place Polywaffle. There is also a place called Cheesecake in the Sweetfields. So we've got Whiz Fizz as well. So it's going to be a great time. I have already surmised that one of the player characters that plays in this may end up creating a person who lives and grew up in Cheesecake. Which I'm sure you can figure out who that is. Needs to be. Part of me wants to ask Evil One, do you want to name a town? But at the same time, I'm also terrified. They come up with some interesting names. Be very afraid. Yeah. Well, we've already been suggested by Edwin that in the Tuesday game where the Butt Hills exist, they are not called the Butt Hills, but everyone calls them the Butt Hills, we should definitely make a cave in there for you guys to explore, but I thought that that would be a terrible idea. Khyber Pass. I don't want to make it look like that's forced in there. I want it to look natural. Like that. So once we get all of these towns in and everything like this, we then put in our absolute metric butt ton of trees. Which, as I'm sure you can imagine, is a great time. Great fun. Oh God, don't start, Jojo. It is bad enough that, you know, I named places nice names. Like in the water realm, there's a place called Hall's Rift, like a hall of water. Yeah, no, that's not what it's called. As you can imagine, everyone looked at the text and they renamed it because players be players, bro. Yeah, that kind of happens too. My players have acquired a Trinicorn, or a Triceratops, called Bubbles. They have a Shershu. They also acquired 5 red pandas, which now surround their tiefling paladin and call them Red Leader. They acquired a young tiefling boy named Snitch, who did not turn out to be what they thought. And so they were very confused by Snitch for a little while. Yeah, they do tend to collect things. I'm like, why are we collecting this? But at the same time, I put them in there, so who can I really blame? Me or the players? Yeah, but is it really the players? Or is it... Because this is the thing. If you don't want them to try and collect it, do you put it in the game then? I mean, is it stealing a gang or recruiting members for their own gang? Because it's just a recruitment drive, let's be honest. There's no such... Because... Yeah. Hostile takeover? I can respect the hustle. I mean, I did send a group of my players to a place called the Honey Pot, which they were all for. They thought it was like a brothel. It was going to be they thought it was going to be a host club. No, it turns out it was an illegal organization that found, like, spied for information, killed people, clean up jobs, that kind of thing. Guns for hire kind of situation. While they both liked that, they also were terrified by that. Oh, I am aware that you want those guns. So while they went to the Honeypot Club, they did actually find someone who, well, they were already known to the party. They were part of one of the party members' backstory. And they were actually trying to convince the player character to work for them and their side. Basically, the characters are in a giant game of Zorvental. They are players. Well, entities within the game of Zorvental. Play pieces. And this mobster basically opened a lovely wooden crate, and it too had two handguns in it made of obsidian, and within it also had 6 bullets, but these bullets were quite unique. I was put onto this concept, I think through TikTok, of void energy, and these were 6 void bullets. While on the material plane, they didn't really do much damage to anyone. However, take them to a different alternative plane of existence where creation magic and void magic and the like kind of comes into existence, all of a sudden these bullets were potentially god killers. Tabaxi Artificer really, really wants them because they be cool. Yes. I like to throw some interesting things in, but so they're kind of torn about whether they want to destroy the gods, not destroy the gods, this kind of thing at the moment. Some of the players want to kill certain gods, other players don't. We have a wood elf, rogue, assassin, shadow monk, gloomstalker ranger, who basically just wants to take out the gods that were manipulating his clan of assassins. Interesting. I am always excited to hear about new characters. Well, because this is the thing. I'm going to have, with this particular setting, I do have in mind a couple of ideas of what I'm going to do with the races. I am in the process right now of looking, I say races, I mean species, but there are going to be subsects. But the one thing that I am actually working through and considering right now is there are going to be obvious differences for people who want to play, for example, a human who is born within Feyawyr is going to be different from a human that's born in Anthalamere. So the humans who are born in this particular part of the world are going to have this potential that they are going to be able to have some kind of Fey aspects to them. Because they've grown up within the Feywild, you know, they're not your standard humans, basically. So I want to kind of add those regionalities in. Even though I want it to be a low magic setting, I don't want to strip the players of, you know, especially because it would feel unnecessarily punishing to players who want to play a spellcaster in this world. I don't want to make them particularly weaker. So I am working with on the proviso that magic users are going to be somewhat distrusted more than anything. So, and what it means is because the player characters I'm kind of, at the moment, I'm kind of juggling up what I want to do with that. Just because, for example, time dilation is going to be a bit of an issue. Some spells are going to be tech orientated, depending on where they're from. I very much want the material plane to be very much the techno kind of cyberpunky kind of setting. Whereas the Feywild, where we're going to be starting the campaign, is going to be much more of your traditional magic castery, but also Fey shenanigan, I suppose. You're going to see a lot more of that Fey shenanigan. But there is that element as well, that one of the planes in this material pocket dimension-y kind of layered effect is actually Nethraig, which is going to be the Hells as well. And the Hells... Well, the Hells has already been a little bit predetermined by the interaction that they've had within the game itself. So the Hells in my particular setting, I combine the Hells and the Abyss together as part of the same space, just because demons and devils, trying to keep track of all of that is insanity for me. But we are going to use the circle setting, but it has already been established by previous players who have played in this world that hell, you know, I have had people who have played a demon, not a tiefling, a demon, straight up demon. So hell is very bureaucratic. Like this person that played a demon, he was playing this demon, and he was like 3 days out from long service leave. He worked in familiar relations kind of thing, like making sure that people who have hell familiars and stuff like this, you know, taking care of their familiars and whatnot, and making sure that the familiars are where they're supposed to be, yada, yada, yada. Well, one of the other players in the group did something to their familiar, which meant that the demon character couldn't go on long service leave until that issue was sorted out. So he did not get his long service leave. He ended up having to do more work because of a wizard. So yes, there is that aspect to it. I do have a couple of... so there is going to be a level of third-party borrowing / homebrewing as well. I do have a third-party engineer class, which is a little bit different to an artificer as well. That I'm going to have potentially in play. There are a few things as well that I'm going to have a bit of a play around with, because as I've said already, there's going to be some playable races that are food based. So the Al Creme are like a living cream race, basically. The buttery sprites revere God as a butter, like butter as a god, should I say. The gummies are obviously a playable race of gummy people. And some of these are third party creations and things like this. So, yes. Even the established stuff, I am for some of the races and stuff, I'm going over the Plane Shift books that were third party produced for, I think, D&D 5e, because they've got some interesting races in there. I'm going to bring back a race of humanoid dog characters that are descended from Fey corgis, which have a history of annoying my players in my games. I'm fairly certain that my players in the second era, or the first era should I say, are responsible for the complete annihilation of the bunny sharks. They did come up against the bunny sharks at some point. I had thought they could be a playable race, but might be a little bit excessive, maybe. Bunny sharks. You heard that correctly the first time. I came across them, I think, on a Pinterest post as a joke. And so I went, why not? Put them in the game. What's the worst that could happen? I almost TPK'd my party with a group of tiny land sharks that had bunny ears. My Warforged, I can tell you right now, Valcor, I do have a slightly different rule set for the Warforged, but they are in essence, like the way that they mechanically work is a little bit the same. Like, well, no, it is the same, but there are a few like storytelling tweaks that I've changed for like their rest properties. Yeah, you've seen it. But yeah, so the bunny sharks, no, they were tiny house cat sized sharks that had legs, had bunny ears, bunny legs, lived on land, and our tabaxi of the party got led away by a couple of them. And then they acted like land piranhas. The group thought it was a hell of a joke until they started getting eaten. Catnip may have been involved, yes. Yes. But it is also the tabaxi of the party that did indeed ride into battle against zombies on a Triceratops, holding a shotgun, holding a pistol, and holding a red panda in their other hand, and the red panda was also wielding a shotgun. Hi, Gift of Gabby, how are you? I am doing well. Welcome to this map building stream. We are talking shenanigans, homebrewed creatures, little ghosty, yes. My name is Boomeadow, and I am here every fortnight doing map building. I also map build in the mornings because, as you can probably tell, I am Australian. So in my mornings, I also, on Mondays and Fridays, I also map build, and every other fortnight, I also map build on Wednesday morning instead, because on the alternate Wednesdays, I say guest star, but I am a player over on Evil One's channel. You'll see that down below. Thank you for the follow. In my About section, you can see kind of the projects that I'm involved in. At the moment, I'm playing in a couple of games over on Evil One's channel over there. Wednesday night, I play Valcor and I, actually, in chat, we play Grung in an entirely Grung D&D game called Grung Gang. That is a very pop culture reference game. Our characters are chaos. I cannot say we are heroes. We are definitely not heroes. But we are trying to survive more than anything. But we are still trying to figure out if we are the problem to the world or the world is the problem. We have released Necrons. We have set entire townsteads on fire. We made one town believe that they had a plague. It was an accident. My character's got 6 intelligence. It's a whole thing. I'm playing a wild magic sorcerer. Valcor is playing a rogue, I believe. And we kind of have little bits and pieces about us as well. So there is that. On Sunday nights, we play in the Star Wars. We are playing a Star Wars Fantasy Flights game. So it is a Star Wars setting over there. I am playing a Jawa. Rogue with a touch of monk. There you go. An all kobold game would be great fun too. Yes, cannot recommend little chaos gremlins enough. They are great characters. And on Thursday nights, very, very shortly, in the next month or so, Evil One is also going to be hosting a game of Vampire the Masquerade that I also play in. So I will be playing a Toreador in that. So they're all kind of projects that I'm involved in at the moment. But at least coming in the somewhat-ish, nearish future, whenever I get these maps done, I will be actually streaming that game on Saturday nights here. So if you like this, you like the way that, like at least some of the rule sets that I seem to talk about that I'm having in this world, feel free to listen into that. So, yeah. Oh, I actually really like, I do like homebrew, but when I play homebrew in my worlds, like as in playtest homebrew in my worlds, all of my players are very aware that they are a work in progress. Gold Dragon Run Country, that's cool. Yeah, no, we very much play the homebrew creatures and stuff like this as a work in progress. And so sometimes we might change things as we go because obviously we want everyone to have a good time, and if some characters are broken AF, it's not as much fun for everybody else. So, you know, we kind of work on those things so that everyone's having a good time and there's no exponential like power drift, I guess, between the characters. Everyone's, has their own story. And this can be, I'm not a big stickler either for, you have to have everyone has to have their own specific class. I've had a party with like 3 paladins, which led to some hilarious things where a little old lady got run over by a cart and not one of the 3 paladins had like spare the dying that day for whatever reason. Because they just thought somebody else had it. I think that's the typical cleric kind of thing, like who has revivification today kind of thing. So yes, we do kind of have a lot of fun. But a Gold Dragon Run Country though, for a kobold led game, makes a lot of sense. I'm actually playing in a completely separate game. I'm actually playing, there was a third-party book come out called Helianas, which I believe was heavily like spoken about on Dingo Doodles, I believe. Night Valcor, thank you for dropping by. So Helianas, and there was a race in there called a Golan, so they're based off the Pangolin race. So I'm actually playing a Pangolin cleric in that, and she was raised by kobolds. So you can imagine she is a 8-foot tall chaos gremlin. She doesn't believe she was a kobold, but she has a lot of kobold-like traits. I like a good character who has a story behind them. I'm a very RP heavy DM, so yes, it is. there is some brilliant stuff in it, Helianas. If you, it was part of a Kickstarter, and it was absolutely fabulous in terms of a lot of really interesting races, a lot of really interesting class kind of options as well. So, but yeah, I do tend to be a very roleplay heavy DM. So you will see a lot of that kind of stuff in my style of gameplay. That being said, I never stop my players from getting into combat. My Tuesday game, they kind of tend to do it themselves. They tend to find out information, then they go sit in the tavern and talk a lot. And I have had them turn around and go, you know, there is a lot of roleplay in this. And I'm like, hey, I legitimately put combat in there for you. Like, there was a whole cult and everything. And you decided that you weren't going to fight them. And you talked your way out of it. So, yeah, I'll have to look more into that. Yes, Gengar. We love Gengar around here. Gengar and Ghosties. It should be pretty obvious. So, yes, they do sit around. The assassin of the party does tend to wander off and go take care of the problems that the group has left behind them. The Tabaxi seems to get himself into a lot of trouble despite the fact he's looking for his family. We have a set of twins. One is a Aasimar, the other is a Tiefling, who have been told that they are the twins of prophecy. They do not believe it. But we still play that out with, you know. Oh, see, that's interesting. I like that. I was just looking at the word kindergarten, and I'm like, is that spelt wrong? You know when you look at a word too long and you think for a moment that word is spelt wrong? That is the moment that I just had. Not wrong, just German. Yes, kindergarten. Yes. Not wrong, just German. It sounds about right. Hello, Bluefies. Welcome. I see your little squid man. Welcome, squid man. How are you this evening? I currently have 5, so that's 4 human places. I'm looking at my list of names. You made a chaotic homebrew race? Oh, please do tell us. We love some chaotic homebrew races. And we are actually talking about chaotic homebrew races. Earlier I was talking about the races of the sweet fields up here, which are going to be all kind of like edibles. So there's a cream race, there's a gummy race, there's a they're called the buttery sprites. Lemur folk. That's so wonderful. Lemur folk. And I'm assuming we're taking inspiration from Madagascar. Oh no, that's sad. But at least she was found and raised by a party. I mean, being raised by an adventure party. Yeah, I can understand that as well, Blueface. That is a good plan. I'll come in here because I think I might want to put some sand dunes or something in. I mean, it depends on the adventuring party too, Gabby. I mean, considering how chaotic adventuring parties can tend to be, it is concerning. A giant party-based religion. Yeah, actually, it's funny you say that because I kind of did something similar with my Selkies. Basically, the Selkie clans are like a giant... Every time you go to a Selkie clan, it's like you're going to Ibiza. The red lines are just in place at the moment for me to know where the territory borders are, I guess. Each of these territories is ruled over by... certain Fey lords, ladies, that kind of thing. It's just me wanting to know exactly where everything kind of is. These dunes. I need to put one here and change its color, I think. Almost right. Okay. Oof. Part of me wants to say, what happens when they get together and they want to say the name over and over and over again? Like trying to get their attention. I feel like I answered my own question though. Oh dear. At least they would have been very proficient with their like combat and stuff though. That's a little too orange, I think, still. Maybe bring down the saturation just a little. That worked a bit better. I am loving hearing about all of your like homebrew races and everything you guys have created. This is absolutely brilliant. Sentient mugs. Okay, I have to ask, how does a sentient mug work? Because I recently put my party up against a keg golem, which of course is not my own personal homebrew. So I respect everybody who can come up with their own homebrew. Filling itself with alphabet soup. That's so cute. I love that concept. Although, what happens when they get knocked over, like knocked prone and stuff, when all the liquid comes out? Like, the liquid's not like their blood, is it? Ooh. Amshiko, that's kind of cool. Yeah, see, I've seen different versions of mushroom races. Obviously, you know, there's the myconids, they're the mycelians from Heliana's. I really like the mushroom races, though. They're very cute. And there are so many different types of mushrooms in the world that you can kind of, like, even, for example, like, so our grung don't all look the same from the Wednesday night. I believe our rogue is a red-eyed green tree frog. My character is a milk dart frog. We've got a couple of strawberry poison dart frogs, and we've got essentially an American bullfrog. Oh, wow. That is kind of cool. I don't know how you'd make that work as a class, though. Like, what class you'd have with that, though. Oh, that's brilliant, Bluefies. Octopus centaurs. I just reread that, Gabby. Octopus centaurs. How does that even work? Like, I could understand like a merfolk kind of thing, like, you know, your Ursula kind of thing. But centaurs, how does that work? Or is it like a version of like a what are they called? A hippocampus. its lower half is an octopus, and it's... So does that... Okay. So would you make that a centaur, or would you say that it's like a version of like a merfolk? Because I allow merfolk as a separate entity, like to like sea elves and things like this. So I think at the moment I've got sea elves, I've got tritons, but I also do allow... I've also got sirens, which I think at the moment I'm running that sirens are essentially that mermaid kind of thing. How does that even work? I'm trying to think of that cursed image now. Like, what is a crab centaur even look? That's cursed in my brain. She's become the terrifying size of medium. I know. What were we looking at, actually? I think one of our newest frogs coming into the game is going Rune Knight and is taking that. But I think that they immediately become large regardless of the fact that, you know, they completely skip the medium thing. Because at the moment I think we're all small because frogs. So... Why is it some of the funniest things happen with frog kind of crab legs and one crab claw? Just, it's kind of the whole idea though, like crab legs on a human body. Like, do they move sideways or like a crab, or do they move forwards? Because that's still terrifying, especially if they were to climb up a wall. Just no. Oh, that's horrifying. Yeah, I think in a game one of my friends ran, one of the characters had a crab familiar that he couldn't get into the room to combat. So he kind of like punched a hole in the wall, armed his crab familiar with a knife and sent him in. See, I wasn't aware that all crab... There you go. I don't know enough about crabs. Although I do know that like, especially like, obviously blue swimmer crab, it's in the name, they swim. Yeah, but spider crabs are horrifying to look at, like. But you are correct, I suppose. That does make sense that a spider crab actually goes forward. Just the legs, the way they move. It gives the skin crawls. But I suppose that makes sense, yeah. I suppose then that something like a king crab and things like that, you know, Arctic crabs and stuff like that, they do tend to go forwards as well. So I just never really thought about it. It's just like I saw a video not that long ago of a crab like taking off and swimming, and I'm like, it never occurred to me that obviously they swim. They clearly don't just climb everywhere. Or like crawl everywhere. Like it hadn't even occurred to me, I guess. Ozwombat, how you doing? I am doing wonderfully tonight. I'm hoping to get the map for summer and autumn finish. Summer and autumn, should I say? Spring and summer. It is Lo-Fi Stardew Valley Mix. All of the music I'm using tonight comes from Game Chops. I do actually go through and I put them into my description later if you want to check out where they're from. However, I will just give me a second. This is Game Chops, Stardew and Chill from DJ Cutman and Coffee Date. So I will actually link that so that you guys can see where it is. We've had a couple of really good ones in tonight. We have had DYNAMAXED, which was a Pokémon group. We had Nook and Chill, which is obviously your... Now I can't think of the name. Animal Crossing. We've had Chilltendo. So we've just kind of been like scrolling through all of those at the moment. Make sure I get the right names and everything, because I like to give proper credit where credit is due. Yes, if you're looking for some really good chill music, go check them out. There we go. So yes, I think the next one I've got lined up for whenever this finishes, which is still quite a way away. The next one is apparently called Smash and Chill, which is a post-rock lo-fi synthetic styles to using Super Smash Brothers, if you were wondering. That'll be up next. We'll see how it sounds. I don't think I've actually listened to that one. Uh-oh. I'm going to redo this because I don't like the position of that head. Yeah, we get a nice amalgamation of music in here. I do kind of like generally on my streams fluctuate between a couple of different producers. I use both. I use Lo-Fi Girl. I use Game Chops. I also use Chill Hop as well. And I go through and I make sure that I add all the credits as directed by the producers of that music. So, because as I said, credit should go to where credit is due. here is the interesting part of trying to match up a water texture. Because I do want it to be the same water texture as the one that is already there. But do you think they'll tell me the exact one it is? Nope. See, too light. I hope you're all having a wonderful night so far, though. I'm having a great time with you all being here. The hard part when you just want a simple water pattern. Oh, thank you for pointing that out, Jojo. See, we'll see if this actually comes up because it won't actually tell me. It won't actually tell me the original, like, whoa, is that the one? It might be. You are a smart cookie, Jojo. Thank you. I was clearly having a very daft moment, so thank you. I mean, I haven't had an issue with it per se. There have been a couple of things. Mostly my biggest frustration is just obviously something that I'm coming into now, which is I want a bit more futuristic cyberpunky kind of textures and stuff now, because that's just where my game is going. But at the same time, I'm also that extra and over the top that I am happy and fine drawing my own and bringing them in as my own assets kind of thing. So which because this turtle island does actually move. So, which, while it's not, it doesn't belong specifically to this territory, it is actually a town. Oh yeah, I think that is a thing that they have been slowly working towards. I do have a friend on here, a friend of the channel, Tyrant Dungeon, who actually utilized their I think has utilized their actual like world builder that just produced land masses and things like that, and they've tried that out. I haven't done that yet, just because, you know, I kind of go for the method of make a blob of land and see what happens. This has also worked badly in my favor sometimes. Yes, it has worked out badly sometimes on my end, because sometimes I have accidentally made suggestive looking land masses without realizing, until I've shown friends this completed map and they're like, you do realize this is what that looks like. And I've had to go through and then change it because I had not seen it initially. I think it is a little bit of that case of you finish something off and you step back and then you're like, oh, oops. Yeah, done it once or twice accidentally. So this should be the last piece that we're working on here. Now, this landmass over here does actually have a name, but it does travel over to the opposite side of the map. So if this was a globe, it would be a landmass on the side there. And this is called Calliope, this territory. So we are going to have a place up here on the top, but we're going to have to change the layer of that. I'll also point out, Jojo, sometimes I get stuck in my ways too. Like, I actually haven't tried out other builders yet. I think I've looked at Dungeon Fog, but again, at the time, I don't think Dungeon Fog has given me exactly what I want to build, but I also haven't had a decent play around on it to know whether it would give me something that I want or not, which is more on me than it is on Dungeon Fog. There was also another one I recently tried. Give me a second, I can have a look. Can I have a look? No, I cannot currently find it on my computer. But yeah, so there was another one as well that I'd been using recently, which I'm still learning to use, but because it's still relatively new and I think it's just come out of beta, I'm still learning how to use it well. So I think it's Dungeon Alchemist, I believe it's called. Activate the brain, make it work. And every now and then I see where I've made a mistake, because that is supposed to be the town there. Part of it, I've discovered, is literally time. Like, I've made a really wonderful map of like a pirate cove, and I spent hours in there working on the textures and everything like this to make it look like a beach with waves crashing on it and all this kind of stuff, and it looks really, really good. But yeah, it did take a lot of time to build that map. Yeah, it is literally just a lot of playing around with it, just taking your time with it. And I mean, when I started using Incarnate, now the way that mountains and hills and stuff layer over each other is a lot smoother and a lot better than it used to be, which I've actually found has helped a lot. Yeah, definitely helped out a lot. I think this is probably the closest I've come to being like really prepared as well. Like, I've actually got all of my town names written down. It's only when I decided to go off like my pre-prescribed plan that I'd set for myself that it's kind of gotten a little bit hectic, and I'm like, I need town names. think, as you pointed out, it does come down to what you're comfortable with as well. And if, you know, you've worked with something that's a little bit more compatible. I think because up until recently, I've done a lot of fantasy kind of maps. This has worked really well for me. I make a lot of top-down maps as well for my towns and things like this, which is the eventual plan with this stream as well, that I will eventually start building each of these towns. Yeah, city layouts has taken me a little bit to get used to. I actually like the thing that just takes, I think just like with every map builder, it's something that takes time. Like, for example, I'm about to put the trees on this. The trees are going to take time. And it's the same with the city layouts. I mean, I do tend to place each of the kind of square. One thing I think I used, now I've got to think about this. I did actually come across at least a city builder per se. And it would just give like basic maps of like blocks and things. Thank you, Evil One. Yeah, they did give basic blocks and things like this. So I did work on that. That has actually helped a little bit with at least where city blocks and stuff go. And I don't do in the streets until after I've got the city blocks in. So yes, working on that, and the city streets I definitely put in after the blocks. I'm not 100% sure on the actual city builder, like the city layout builder though. Pretty sure it was just one that you can kind of generate online. And so it was just all these randomly generated towns, but I have a whole series of like hardcover notebooks that I've gone through and written down every town name on like a page, and then a double page spread will be dedicated to what the industry of that town is, which will give me an indication of where the town kind of needs to be situated, and or like you know, at the time it was like, oh, does this town have like a railway? Does it have an aeronautical society, you know, to get around? Because I'd realized that the way that I designed the town is like the world is, it was a very vast world. So I had to start considering transportation methods. I had to start considering how different towns get, like, not every town processed every material they kind of had. So I had to start considering how things got around, how big some towns were, because some towns might have a really small focused industry, and if they don't, like for example silk making, yeah, there would be a lot of, so the process of silk making, and this is where I probably get a little over the top, because let's point out, most players aren't actually going to care about this stuff, but I really, hello Tyrant Dungeon, how are you this evening? yeah, I kind of think about what kind of makes up those towns and what industries are involved in that. So is that a big town? Is it a small town? So silk making and things like this might be a small group of people. Better is always good. I'm glad you're feeling better and that you were able to join us this evening. Okay, it is time for trees. Basically, if anyone ever spoke to any of my players, they would know I go just a little too hard when it comes to tavern menus and not even, well, yes, the world lore, but as I said at the start of this stream, I have been designing this town, this world for like over 5 years now. And in the scope of that, it has meant that I've started to think about like how magic within the world works. So in the first era, magic was created by essentially sets of twins that were born that were descended from eldritch bloodlines. And so one of the twins would have to sacrifice the other, and through the spilling of their eldritch blood would ensue the creation of magic. Yes. No, that's fine. Anytime you drop in to say hi is always wonderful. We just love that you're here just to say hi. Yeah, so that's what happened with that. And within that time frame, obviously some of the players were born as the twins of prophecy, as they're called. And they didn't want to do this. And there is kind of secrety stuff going on with that maybe they're not actually the twins of prophecy and, you know, all this kind of stuff, which is what they're kind of finding out right now. So I can't be too in depth about that. But one of the things that they want to do is find a different way for magic to be created within the world, which I am 100% behind them doing. I am A-okay with them wanting to do that. So that is something that they're focusing on, and that is something that they want to do, and I'm happy for them to do that, and it's going to be great. What it does mean, though, is, well, then all of a sudden magic comes from a different place. Well, where does that come from? And so what I do know, because I've had a party play through the third era of this world, by that point, they're mining ether. Now, ether, as they discovered throughout the course of this, ether is just a special way to say crystallized, kind of like amber in a little way, but it is the crystallized sap of the world tree. So there are people who are mining that within this timeline, which is kind of what they're doing. And it has meant that by the fourth timeline, which is the setting in which this world is set, it means that magic is now unstable because they've been mining the weave ore that makes magic. So it has led to an instability in magic that a lot of people don't really like, and things like this. So it is a work in progress, and you know, actually getting to focus on that and play out those storylines, like, that's not something that you would ever sit down and originally create unless you really, really wanted to. So, so that's one aspect of something that we've done with that. And there has also been situations of, there have been situations where we've been figuring out other things that are going on within the world. And we know that, well, in the first era, there were the Eldritch gods. In the second era, they kind of passed on the torch or whatever to the draconic elemental gods, the elemental dragons, who created the world, basically. Because the way the elemental dragons were created were... The Eldritch Goddess of Chaos basically tried to overthrow her husband, and she was punished for it. So she was stripped of her magic, and that magic was used by the Goddess of Fate to create the Draconic Gods. And then from there, we have also had... from there, we've also added in... So, yeah, that created the Draconic Gods. But the Draconic Gods in the second era ended up having to create a race of champions known as the Realm Witches. And the Realm Witches then, when they basically saved the gods in the world and yada 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 and all that jazz, they became the Ascendant Gods of the third era. Now, by the time the fourth era has come around, I'm not necessarily doing a low religion setting, but one of the offsets of the merge happening, which led to this particular world being the way that it is, it meant that the gods have kind of lost touch with the material plane. So their messages can't always get through and things like this. So we're going to see a lot less of the gods in this particular setting. So it means that people who are your clerics, are your, paladins who do rely on gods and things like this, what we're going to see from them basically then is we are actually going to see that they are kind of deemed as special because they are truly God-touched, obviously. And in a world where there aren't actually that many kind of God-fearing people, it means that clerics, the way that I'm going to be running clerics is that clerics, most of the average clerics are going to just be healers, doctors, things like that. But it's going to be very rare that they are like true magic users, if that makes sense. Look at that density. I want to turn that down just a little bit. Even that might still be too much. Now I do have to be somewhat careful. This will at least add in the base of trees. So we're going to also put some cherry blossom trees in here in a minute too. Because what we are trying to make it look like is this. As you can see, there's cherry blossom trees and things like that here that we're trying to emulate. So this will be part of the spring court over here. Just do a quick save. Gets a bit antsy about lots of trees. Now, I did want, in the transition between, okay, so we've got the Court of Spring here, but in that south easterly section, that is the Court of Lightning. Sorry, so it's a Court of Air. So we've got the Court of Lightning we're heading down into here. So I was thinking I was going to have like a more jungly kind of situation. Trees. I would like to say that this is this is kind of just the part that takes forever. Because I do like the area brushes and the density brushes, but it still makes it look a little bit too uniform. And I don't like the uniformity of it all. I feel like there's probably more cherry blossom trees outside this Sweetfields area, which, hey Drees, you will love the Sweetfields area. Look how pretty that is. It's where all of our food-like races live. Like, one aspect that I kind of came across and I really liked about, for example, the Alcrem, which I believe is a modified Pokemon for the D&D setting. They mature to adulthood about age 4, but no one actually knows how long they live for. This was part of the notation for this homebrewed class, homebrew race. No one knows how long they live for because they don't atypically die of old age. They tend to get eaten before they die of old age. This is something that I'm going to add to this. I'm going to add in some cherry blossoms, which if I open up, where are you, cherry blossoms? Up here a bit higher. Up here. We've got some cherry blossoms here. But I do have to make them smaller so they look the same kind of size as the others. because I did put some kind of like sweet trees in here as well. They're like these little mushroomy things. Yeah. So that'll just add that really bright kind of like pinky tones and stuff. Again, it doesn't take long to get to like 500 though when you're putting in trees. Okay. So yes, when I actually export these, I export them usually at 4K. Sometimes I do export them at, I think the big map, I think when it's completed, I do export it like 8. Just so that when obviously your players are looking at it on a computer zoomed in, they can actually still read all of these names properly. Because it would be devastating if I did all of this work and then they can't read it. It's the last thing I want. So I'll go in and add, extra trees in on this border later. When I actually combine this map with the big map. So I'll take this map, I will save this, and then I will add this as a stamp to the big map. And then I'll resize it and just, when I resize the map, obviously, I will go ahead and add in the extra trees along the border line here so it actually blends seamlessly. So you're not getting like weird half trees. These territories, like this big map here, which will have the names of the territories over the top as well. Hardest thing is to make it look spontaneous, basically. See, that's a brilliant plan. Yeah, I'm one of those DMs that I end up being a little OP when it comes to things like, so I used to be a chef, and so one thing I really love doing for my players is creating really accurate like tavern menus that they would, you know, be able to go into any kind of like pub or hotel or cafe kind of thing and actually be able to order from it. So, hi Tyrant Dungeon. Yes. Can I help you? Or is that your way of saying you're dropping back in? What did you find on Incarnate the other day? Because I know that you were experimenting with the world thing. The world builder. Oh, I'm aware. Up here. It's just sometimes it does make it look a little too uniform. So I do kind of like start out doing the areaed trees, and then I go in and make them a bit more spontaneous. It does actually help though when you're trying to fill big areas. Now, over here, how are we looking? Not quite yet. I know, I think it took me quite a while to realize it too, of just experimenting and playing stuff. And I'm like, that would have been so much easier on some of these like big things. Wonder. See, there are jungle trees and willow trees. Which some of these are going to start moving in a bit more of this area. Trees, that's at 10. I forgot something I like doing around these things here. I like putting some of these kind of green mountains in around the base of this, because this is essentially a root system where the world tree roots comes through. So obviously they have indeed pushed their way through. yes, it just becomes a process of filling in all the trees. And with any luck, we'll get this map finished tonight. Just a lot of trees. So yes, we've moved on to Smash and Chill, apparently. By Game Chops, which has remixes of Super Smash Brothers, apparently. Turn down the density a little bit. Using that brush tire, don't you? Add in some jungles. Might just get some different brushes though. see if we can add a different texture as well. How are you guys going this evening? How are you coping through all of this? My multitude of tree planting. See, the density of that is too high on cherry blossoms. I think more cherry blossoms here, but then we'll loosen out the density even further so it becomes a bit more sparse down here. No, that's all right. You take your time, Jojo. We've all been there, don't worry. Thank you for watching, though. If you have to step away for work or whatever, thank you for being here. If you like what I do, please drop a follow if you haven't already. Otherwise, turn on your notifications so you know when I go live. I currently run my map building streams on Mondays, Wednesdays and Fridays, usually in the morning, which I think ends up being nighttime for a lot of my overseas viewers, unfortunately. But just letting you know, but I do run this bit of a longer stream once a fortnight on Wednesday nights, as you are seeing tonight. So join me here for a bit of a chat, just a chill time, chill session. I love having you guys here to talk to, because otherwise I am just a crazy person talking to myself. Which, you know, can have its benefits, I suppose. We are getting close to being almost done with this. Just putting in these final kind of trees. There is something a bit mesmerising about the way these brushes put these trees down though. Might have to come in a minute and put in some more of this paintwork here. Where are you? This one here. Isn't it delightfully like candy cane? Make a nice bigger brush. Like candy all over the ground with the sheer number of flowers, because this is a spring territory. Put in some of these individual trees and some of these islands. Now we're in a bit of a pickle about what I want to do with the summer court. Yes, questions about what to do with the summer court. Got a big tree root there, and we've got... Let's have a look at what plants they have, because I don't want it to be straight up dead, because the summer court isn't like that. We could probably put in some palm trees down here towards the coast. These swamp trees could be a possibility though. Because, yeah, we still want the summer court of the Feyawyr to be quite lush still. So I think it's going to be more jungly, tropical jungle. However, we're getting over to quite deserty over here, so we might want to... I think we'll keep it quite jungly towards the coast. Which I'll just make a note here of the trays that I'm using. Which I believe these are swamp trees. I've also been using jungle trees. See, I think these kind of colours here, I want to kind of keep a bit more for, I want to keep a bit more of that for like the autumn transition. And I want to do like true swamp, I think, for for autumn. So yes, get a bit more of these bushes and whatnot in. Just throw in some of these deciduous trees too. Making those notes of what I'm using where, just so that I can make sure it's consistent on the other side when we get to that. That's fleshing it out a little bit, adding a bit more of that colour that we were looking for. And the final touch, I think, we'll go with some desert plants at 15. Okay, we'll add in some of these desert plants just in here, I think. Ooh, might have to take that down to 10, just so they're not too large. spread if that's not. It's too dense. Right on the edge of this. Here's where we haven't done down here. We just got to do this little patch down here. There's deciduous trees, which we set at 26. Just to add a bit of fluff. These bushes, which we've seen a couple of so far. And then these were in at 10. Which, for the sake of brevity, we'll get okay. The only thing I think I want to do is just bring in just a touch of this sandier texture in the middle. I think I just have to make the wave just a touch smaller on that. Might go really bright red though. Add some of that into. There we go. All right. And there we go. I think we actually managed to get the spring-summer transition done. Do I think that I'm going to be able to get this the same? I don't know. We shall see. But thank you to everybody who joined me on tonight's stream. Thank you to everybody who joined the chat, said hi, answered questions, asked questions. It's been great having you here. If you like what I do, please drop me a follow and turn on your notifications so you know when I go live. If you miss the stream or you want to go back on anything because I might have mentioned something you like, you can find all of these if Twitch takes them down, because obviously Twitch has a very short bracket. But if you want to catch up on these or see them later, you can find them over on my YouTube channel of the same name, Boomeadow. Otherwise, I am here Monday through to Friday doing various things. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, doing Boomeadow builds. Tuesday, I believe I'm doing Garden Story, and Thursdays I'm doing Little Witch in the Woods. I will not be streaming tomorrow. I have an appointment in the morning which will interfere with my stream schedule. But if you ever want to know if I'm going to be missing a stream or whatnot, you can find my updates on my Twitter, which is Booberry Meadows. Otherwise, thank you for coming here. Thank you for joining. I have loved having you here for the chats, and I will see you all next time. Have a good night. Bye.